So now I want to look at some of the reasons why, some of the disqualifiers that we use that we actually keep ourselves from living our purpose, or how we keep ourselves from finding and living out that creative genius that's inside of us. Because there are things that have been programmed into us by the world, by our circumstances, by other people, thought patterns, all these things that become very normal, very comfortable, very ordinary, things that you wouldn't take on purposefully, but when we learn them, we have to almost unlearn them so that we can pick up the right things that lead us the right direction in our creative genius, so we don't settle for those substandard ways. The first one is a disqualifier that I think a lot of us run into. And there's a verse that says, "Hope deferred makes the heart grow sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life." A lot of times we will take attempts to go after something bigger or better, to go after a dream or a purpose in our heart, or to live out something that isn't in the box or that isn't ordinary. And when it doesn't happen right away, or on our second try or on our third try, we get worn down. Or as the years pass and things haven't changed, we let dust gather on those things until we suppress them eventually. And they grow dormant in our lives. Doesn't mean they're not there, but it's things that we end up pushing down. And eventually our heart starts to grow sick because that what started out as hope gets deferred. It's having to wait so long, and it's testing our perseverance at such a level that we just let go of it. And it creates a bitterness inside our heart, a bitterness sometimes towards God or towards other people. And we start blaming our circumstances or all these different reasons why it didn't happen yet. But sometimes it just requires perseverance because you're waiting for the right time in the world. You're waiting for the right people to work with. You're waiting to learn and grow more in that area because you need to cultivate what's already inside of you. It doesn't just come out ready the very first try or second or even third try. And so it's something that we let get in the way of what wants to shine out of you. And there's some famous people that we probably, a lot of us look up to, that have gone through the exact same thing that we don't remember. And we call them famous failures. And so I have one of my books, The Culture Purple. I'm going to read you a couple of these right now. I'm pretty sure you'll recognize them. Starting though with Walt Disney. He was one of the first ones, but there's a quote he uses because of this, because he went through his failures, and it's "keep moving forward." The cartoon movie Meet the Robinsons is totally built around it. It's about celebrating failure and how much we learn from failure, even more than we learn from success. And that's why that perseverance becomes so key. And so it's become a motto in our lives and with our family is keep moving forward. And often when we do that, we don't get instantaneous results. But later on, we do, more like a seed, right? It takes time to grow. But Walt Disney wasn't successful right off the bat. In fact, it says his early failure, he was fired from a newspaper job for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. Can you imagine Walt Disney being considered someone who lacked imagination and has zero original ideas? That's the opposite of who Walt Disney is as we know him to be, and the opposite of what made him successful. But that's what he was pegged as. So how many of you have pegged yourself in a certain way in a negative sense when the reality is the opposite might very well be true, and your success and your purpose and destiny, your creative genius might be locked up in those lies? That's some of the disqualifiers that we end up using against ourselves. There's some other incredible famous failures. Lionel Messi. A lot of us are very familiar with him. One of, if not the best soccer players of all time. At age 11, he was cut from his soccer team after being diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency. It made him smaller in stature than most kids. And now, look at him. He is considered by many to be the GOAT of soccer, of football. Albert Einstein. His early failure, he wasn't able to even speak until he was nearly 4 years old. And his teachers said he would not ever amount to much. Can you imagine looking at Einstein today and what we know of him and saying, this guy won't amount to much? It's not there. I don't see it. That's what people said about him. What have people said about you that you need to persevere through that is the opposite of what is true? What have you used to disqualify yourself, or others have used to disqualify you in that way that's inside of you, that creative genius that's locked up? Like those 3 to 5 year olds, 98% of them were already there, but it was unlearned because of the world around you. Those who weren't given the freedom to live it out, then don't give it to you because they were never given that chance. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room and cried. And now who is he? What if he'd stayed locked in that room? How many of us take our destiny, our future, our purpose, that creativity or genius that's inside of us, and we lock it up and hide it? What will happen if you let it out? When we learn to let go of those disqualifiers that people have said about us or that we've said about ourselves, you'll be amazed at what can happen. There's other circumstances we use as well. Things like age or lack of resources. We used to live in Ethiopia. We spent 3 years working on the streets of Ethiopia, walking the streets every day among some of those who are struggling the most. We especially worked with a lot of young kids who had nothing, who actually lived in plastic houses on the streets, known as street kids. And as they figured out who God created them to be, their lack or what they had in their hands or their young age, or it didn't define them. And before we knew it, these kids started rising up and shining to their friends and started going to school and shining in school and getting incredible marks. They started changing the streets and the culture all around them because we believed in them enough to help them see and realize who they were through God's eyes, not through the world's eyes. Because again, the world and so many of the things that are set up in the world coach that creative genius out of us or bury it or try to disqualify us before we ever have a chance to live it out. But I know that you want to live it out just as much as I do. I want to live out every purpose I was created for, and we want to help you do the exact same. Not one of your purposes should fall to the ground. And so the rest of these videos and this course is there to help you do that, to help take those things that you have disqualified or someone has disqualified and to extract them and bring them out. The last disqualifier I want to talk about in this video is our past. Because a lot of us allow our past to define us. Things that have happened to us or been done to us, things that we have done and that we regret and feel guilt over. But oftentimes it's what you've been through is what God will use to make that much more a difference in the world. Your testimony, when you overcome something, whether it's lack or difficult circumstances or tragedies or bad decisions, when you overcome those things and get to the other side, you have an authority to help others overcome those exact things. And often you have, because you've been through that, you have more compassion for those people and how to help them out of it. When you have compassion for them, you have a greater love. And that greater love is a greater force to help break through the walls necessary to help you and others into that hopeful future before you, the one that's locked into that creative genius that's buried inside of you. Our past can be like a wall of a prison cell that casts a shadow that we feel like we can't escape, but it's just a shadow. And if you keep walking, don't stare at the wall, but keep looking ahead and realize what's in you, you'll be amazed what God can do through your life.